Welcome to my part 2 video on composite area and perimeter using triangles and rectangles. So the other day we looked at composite area of triangles and rectangles. Now we're going to look at composite perimeter using triangles and rectangles. So we need the note sheet from the other day and go down to where it says perimeter. Now remember, perimeter, we count the sides and sum, meaning we count the sides and add them all together. So here are some triangle attributes that we need to review. The first is equilateral triangles. So notice in an equilateral triangle, all the sides are the same and all the angles are also the same. In an isosceles triangle, two sides are the same and two angles are the same. And then in a right triangle, we have two legs and we have a hypotenuse that's opposite the right angle. And so now when we're figuring out perimeter with a triangle in it, the hypotenuse of the triangle, we're going to need to find that in order to calculate the perimeter. So here's example number 1. And notice we have this part is 10, this part is 3, and this part is 14. But if we're going to find the hypotenuse, we need to know both legs. Well, this side, I look, opposite sides are congruent. So if this side is 3, this side is also 3. And then I need the base of the triangle. So if this whole side is 14, and from here to here is 10, I can do 14 minus 10 to get this missing part. So this is 4 feet. Okay, now I can calculate the hypotenuse by using the Pythagorean Theorem. So remember, it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now it doesn't matter which one I call a and b, but I'm going to call this one my a, so we're going to say 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. I know that 3 squared is 9, 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 squared, or 4 times 4, is 16, equals c squared, and 9 plus 16 is 25, equals c squared. Now remember, I want to get c by itself, so the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. And the square root of 25 is 5. I'm going to call this 5. Now, here's the tricky part. I have two numbers over here, but really I only want one number for the perimeter because this whole side is 14. So I only needed this in order to calculate the hypotenuse. So I'm going to get rid of that so I don't get confused. And now I'm going to circle all of the sides. And I notice I have 4 sides. I have a base, I have a hypotenuse, I have a top, and I have a side. So now I'm going to add those up. So I'm just going to start with the 14. So 14 plus 3 plus 10 plus 5. And 14 plus 3 is 17, plus 10 is 27, plus 5 is 32. Remember, your label for perimeter is just the measurement, so 32 feet. Okay, let's look at some more examples on the back. So turn the page. And first of all, we already did the area the other day, so I'm going to get some measurements back here. Okay, so you probably already have these, but if you don't, go ahead and fill them out. Remember, 16 minus 2 is 14, so the height was 14. And remember, if this is 8, this is also 8. But remember, I split it in half because I drew in the height. And so if I split this in half, each side would be 4. So this is 4. And this is also 4. Okay, now, and let's say this side is missing, so I need that for the perimeter. So this side is 2 because opposite sides are congruent. So now I got to find this side and this side. by using the Pythagorean Theorem. So all I have to do is find the Pythagorean Theorem, use the Pythagorean Theorem to calculate the hypotenuse, and I will have this one and this one, because they're both the same. So we're going to say a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And I'm going to use this one as my a, so I'm going to say 14 squared plus my bottom, which is 4 squared, equals c squared. 14 squared is 196, plus 4 squared, or 4 times 4, is 16. Now I add those together, and I get 212 equals c squared. And now the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. Therefore, c equals, and I'm going to round to the nearest tenth, so it's going to be 14.6. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write 14.6 here, and I'm going to write 14.6 here. And I'm going to go ahead and circle and count all the sides of the outside. Remember, perimeter is the outside, so I'm only going to count the outside. So 8, 2, 14.6, 14.6, and also 2. Notice I didn't count this because this is inside. That's the height. Now write this down, 8 plus 2. And where you have room, you might have ran into this a little bit, so you might have to fit it in somewhere. Plus 14.6 plus 14.6 plus 2. And when I add those up, I get 41.2 feet. Okay, let's look at number 2, and we'll go in and fill in what we already know. We already know that the height was 20 minus 4, which was 16. And because I split this in half, okay, and I know that if this is 16, this is also 16, so each side would be 8, because half of 16 is 8. So this is 8, and this is also 8. And because opposite sides are congruent, if this is 4, this is also 4. So once again, I have to find the hypotenuse, so I'm going to do Pythagorean Theorem. So let's see, you're probably going to have room here. Let's do it here, sorry. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, a squared, I'm going to use this as a, so 16 squared plus the bottom is 8 squared. 16 squared is 256 plus 8 squared, which is 64. So 256 plus 64 equals c squared. When I add those together, I get 320 equals c squared. And the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. And the square root of 320 to the nearest tenth is 17.9. So I'm going to fill in this as 17.9, and this is 17.9. Okay, I'm going to count up my sides. So we're going to start here, 16 plus 4 plus 17.9 plus 17.9 plus 4. Remember, there's 5 sides on the outside here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I'm going to write those down and add them up. I'm going to start with 16. So 16 plus 4 plus 17.9 plus 17.9 plus 4. And when I add those up, I get 59.8 feet. Okay, let's move down to number 3. And once again, we'll get what we already have done. So the height was 10 plus 6 plus blank equals 24. 10 plus 6 is 16, and 24 minus 16 is 8, so the height was 8. And the base was 16 minus 11, which is 5, and half of 5 is 2.5, so see if you can squeeze that in there. Okay. Now I'm going to use the Pythagorean Theorem to get these two parts. Now, one thing I got to keep in mind though is this whole side is 24, but it's not 24 from here to here. So I got to use 10 plus 6 to get this. So this is actually 16 on this side. Okay, so cross that out and put 16 on this side so we don't get confused when we add up all the outside. Okay, now I'm going to use Pythagorean Theorem to find the hypotenuses. So let's do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. My a, we're going to call this 8, so we're going to do 8 squared plus my b is the bottom, 2.5 squared equals c squared. 8 squared is 64. 2.5 squared is 6.25. And when I add those up, I get 70.25 equals c squared. And remember, the opposite of squaring something is square root. So I'm going to take the square root of 70.25. And I'm going to round to the nearest tenth, so c equals 8.4. So we're going to put 8.4 on both sides. And now I'm going to count my sides. I'm going to start here. So 16 plus 16 plus 8.4 plus 8.4 plus 6. Don't forget this. Even though it's written on the inside, it's really this measurement here, which is still the outside, 11 and 10. So there are 7 total sides. So we're going to write them out. So 16 plus 16 plus 8.4 plus 8.4 plus 6 plus 11 plus 10. And I got to make sure I have 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. And when I add those up, I get 75.8 inches. Okay, the last one is very similar. It's the same picture but different numbers. So once again, draw the dotted line for the height. And remember, we calculated the height before. 16 plus 8 is 24, and 36 minus 24 is 12. So the height is 12. We should already have that written. The base was 26 minus 17, which is 9. But if this whole thing is 9, then half of 9 is 4.5. So this is 4.5, and this is 4.5. Okay, so once again, I only need to calculate the Pythagorean theorem one time because they're both the same. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We're going to call the a the 12, so we're going to do 12 squared plus 4.5 squared equals c squared. 12 squared is 144. 4.5 squared is 20.25 equals c squared. When I add those together, I get 164.25. And the opposite of squaring something is square rooting. So the square root of 164.25 is 12.8 to the nearest tenth. Whoops, that doesn't look like an 8. But it is. This is 12.8, so make sure you have 12.8. And then come up here. Let's write 12.8. Now I should have done this in the beginning, but I forgot to. From here to here is not 36. It's the whole side is 36. So I have to take this side plus this side to get from here to here. So 16 plus 8 is 24. So I'm going to cross that out and put 24. Now I'm going to add them up. So I got this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Even though this is on the inside, it's still from here to here, and 7. So now I'm going to write them. I'm going to come down here, come down below where you did the area because I don't have a lot of room there. And let's write right below where you did the area. So 26 plus 24 plus 12.8 plus 12.8 plus 8 plus 17 plus 16. And when I add all those up, I get 116.6 inches. So that concludes our part 2 video on composite perimeter using triangles and rectangles. I hope you have a great day.